Well, what a pleasure it is to have a conversation with Pastor Jeff Vines, who is on the opposite side of the world at the moment. You would probably know him as being from California, but right now he's actually in London, having just, I'm not sure if I'd use the word escaped, but maybe he's feeling that way, just come from Israel after having spent some time there. Jeff, it's a real pleasure to chat to you.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm in London, and it's raining. What a surprise! But I
well,
mean, we had great weather this morning, but it just started raining.
just wait 5 minutes. I think you'll be fine.
I think
But
so.
interesting things going on around the world at the moment, and we could talk about what's happening in the UK right now. But I'm very interested to find out, what were you doing in Israel? It's not
Yeah.
the number one destination for people to go to at the moment because it's a hot spot, but you put yourself there and were there for quite some time. What were you doing there?
In fact, just by asking that question, like when I was in the lounge yesterday, waiting to get out of Tel Aviv or get out of Tel Aviv, and I didn't mean get out of Tel Aviv because so many people were trying to get out. So many flights are canceled. So you never really know if your flight's going to take off until it's taking off. So there was a
Mm.
round of applause once the plane started down the runway. But I was in the lounge, and there was a Jewish family there, and she heard my American accent, which you know is not difficult. And she said, "Why are you here?" I said, "Because I love the land of Israel. I love the people of Israel." And she started crying. She said,
Mm.
"You came now?" And I said, "Look, you're not alone. You know, don't ever think that you're alone." And she just, Robert and I were, I mean, we all started weeping with her, but I think there was such an appreciation. In fact, I was in Israel for 5 weeks, and everywhere, almost every time someone heard the accent, "What are you doing here now?" You know, there's no tourism here. And there's, the streets are pretty much empty other than just the day-to-day work life. And we actually stayed in the Armenian quarter inside the walls of Jerusalem. I didn't want to just go to Jerusalem and just stay outside the walls. So we were in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Caesarea or Caesarea. We were in Gaza. We were in a place called Arco, which is just near the Lebanese border. And we're trying to see all of these sites. We went to the West Bakeville. There's no place we didn't go. We wanted to see and interview and talk to people. So I had set this meeting up about 6 months to a year ago because I felt like I need a better understanding of what's going on in Israel.
You set this up before everything happened last year, the attack
Yeah,
that happened October
yes.
7th. Okay.
And when I mean set it up, I've got a few contacts here in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem that I've made over the years through various tour groups. So, the first few times you come, you tour the land, you go to Via Dolorosa, you go the Mount of Olives and the Garden of Gethsemane and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. You make the tour. But over time, you meet people. And as you meet people, they invite you back. And especially if you're a
Mm.
pastor, they say, let me take you to other places that you need to see. And then over time, I started meeting people that were willing to take me to places that very few Westerners see. And so that was what this trip was about. And even though the war or the tension was beginning to escalate, 2 or 3 months ago in April, after April, no, I decided I was still going to go. I decided there's a lot of people who live here, and if they live here, I can come and encourage them. But I did not have any idea how much my wife Robin and I, my presence in the country would be so appreciated by people.
Mm.
You've got an entire economy that's struggling right now, and even though the tourism is only, I think it's 5.4% of the gross national product, still you have a lot of people who depend on tourism for survival. So you got a lot of
Yeah.
people in that industry who are out of work, and then people are being displaced also up north and near Gaza. They've been moved into the city, especially in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. The government is fitting that bill as they go to the hotels and they live until hopefully the war is over.
I can only imagine how people feel in the country at the moment, because as we have this conversation, there is still the threat of action from Iran and its proxies. It's still waiting to be seen if anything happens with that. I can imagine everybody is on tenterhooks right now. What was it like for
Yeah,
you
people.
and for your wife? So Robin was there, and you said your daughter was there with you as well. Going into some of these places, you went not to the tourist places when you were there. You went and saw other places too.
Yeah, well, I wanted to go to the kibbutz where they had the where the Hamas came over across the border and just basically slaughtered and raped and murdered and did kill babies. And you think Phil, that you can see that and it's not going to bother you. You
Mhm.
know it's going to bother you, but you think, you've heard post traumatic stress and all that stuff. It's hard to see the pain and the struggle of parents, of moms. There are moms right now. There is a type of in the city of Tel Aviv. It's not a memorial, obviously, but it's a dedication part of the city to the hostages who are still missing. And I went through to look at every photo. On one side of the fence, there's like six photos pasted up of young women, probably the same age as my daughter.
Wow.
And if I'm a father and I'm thinking my daughter is in the tunnels of Hamas and probably being violated every day, and we know this because some of them have come out and now are telling their stories. It's hard. It's hard to imagine what some of the moms and dads are going through. And you want to reach out, and you want to hug them, and you want to tell them that you're there for them, but nothing you say is going to help them at this point. And so the pain and the suffering of the people, even and what people, the Jewish community, Israel as a whole, and when I say Israel as a whole, and I'll say this in a moment, I'm actually including Jews, Arabs, and Palestinians that lived together in harmony for up until 1930. They still live in harmony to a great degree, and we'll get into this. I don't know how deep you want to go into that, but what I discovered, here's the huge discovery that I made that I would have never understood according to the American media, because this is not the picture that we're given. The reality is that even the Zionists, the strict Zionists, even the strict Orthodox Jew, and I went to the temples, or not the temples, but I went to the places of worship. I interviewed some of the top rabbis, and they didn't know where I was coming from. I didn't let the cat out of the bag early. I just told them I wanted an interview, wanted to understand what was going on. Phil, they want peace.
Yeah.
They want to live side by side with Arabs, with Jews, with Christians. It is their dream to live in peace. That's what they want. In fact, Rabbi Glick, who is one of the most famous rabbis in Israel, makes journeys. Because I knew that, and I knew that he has great influence, very well respected. Uh, I asked if it was possible for him to take Robin, me, my wife, and my daughter, a personal escort. Now, it cost us. That's not a cheap thing, but I really wanted to do it. He took us personally up to the Temple Mountains, and he prayed that this place would be a place of prayer for all nations. I thought that's incredible. He's quoting both an Old Testament and a New Testament passage, that it would be a prayer. His prayer is that this Temple Mount could be a place for all people of all nations to come and pray. I talked to Zionists, I talked to rabbis, Orthodox Jews, I talked to non-Orthodox Jews, I talked to secular Jews, which is basically what Tel Aviv is made up of. And so there's this idea that we have in America that 90+% of all Jews in Israel are atheistic. Well, that's ridiculous. They may not be practicing their faith, but they're not atheistic. They're trying to
Yeah.
find their identity as a nation, but they believe in God. They're just trying to figure out what their place in the world is. And if you look at their history, they've suffered for being the people of God in their entire existence. So of course you're going to have a younger generation saying maybe this is the cause of our suffering, but
Yeah.
they've not given up on God. And so
It's really
so
interesting
he
what
took
I
us to
hear.
the
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say, it reflects what we experience often, where we have this perception of reality based on what's presented to us, often through the media narrative, the people who are screaming the loudest and making all the noise. But really, when you get in amongst reality, and I think it's the same here in Australia, when you get in amongst everyday mums and dads out in the community, it's a very, very different picture than what is presented in the media narrative. And I'm hearing you say that's the same thing there.
yeah,
If
Phil,
Can
I'm
you
trying to
talk to what else you've learned about the idea of Palestinians, because that phrase has been very much hijacked in recent times. If you go back, you mentioned back in the 1930s, the whole region was called Palestine, and yet today it's framed as being this separate group, this separate nation of people. But
Yeah,
it's very much been a mix of people, Arabs, Jews,
oh,
and Christians.
exactly. Palestinian was a name that referred to basically the people of the land, which were Arabs, Jews, uh, even Christians. But what we forget is there were representations of all those populations in the late back 1920s, early 1930s. Actually, it was Yasser Arafat. He's the one that started using the word Palestine and said that the word Palestinians should only refer to Arabs. Before that, it included all the people of the land. And what you find, if you talk to the everyday Palestinian, the everyday Arab, the everyday Jew, what you find is you find a group of people who want to live together in the land. The problem is you've got the radicals, just like we have radicals in the U.S., just like you have radicals in Australia. They're everywhere. And so unfortunately, in this part of the world, you take Hamas. The Palestinians in Gaza are some of the most persecuted people in the world, but they're persecuted by Hamas, not Israel. And so you find Israel coming in to try to police it, to try to take care of the people, then they're looked at as oppressors.
Hmm.
And the thing that you see more often, this is the first time in Israel that they took me to places where I've seen the walls that have been built. But the walls that have been built and the security, the police posts that have been erected have happened in the last 10, 15, 20 years, not to keep the Palestinians out of certain areas, but to make sure the Jews are protected in the areas they live in. Because what you had suicide bombers, you had people just coming into places, Jewish businesses, and just killing people. But again, it's not every Palestinian, it's not every Arab. It's those who seek to eradicate Israel from the land. And so when you start hearing the speaking from the river to the sea, what are they talking about? Well, they're talking about from the Mediterranean past the Jordan. And that's the land of Israel. That's this narrow piece of land that they've been given. But even so, the thing that amazed me is the grace and the mercy these rabbis expressed. I didn't see hate, Phil. I didn't see them say, we hate the Arab, we hate the... No, they're praying for the peace of Jerusalem and praying that we can somehow all live together. Now, here's the change that has been made. The change that has been made is, I think, for the secular Jew, they've realized, and this is why I think things have escalated here, they're starting to realize that appeasement is not working. So 4 times, as you know your history, 4 times the Palestinians have been offered a state. 4 times. So 1939, 1948, 2000, 2008, and every time, categorically, turned it down. Ben-Gurion was one of the first to do that, said, look, let's live together. Let's have a Palestinian and Israeli state. But not all Palestinians, but the Palestinian radicals like Hamas, like Hezbollah, they don't want anything to do with any kind of two-state solution. They want the complete annihilation of Israel. And so,
well, as I
when you're
understand
dealing
it,
with
the
that,
Hamas constitution begins with that very stated goal to eradicate Israel off the face of the earth, effectively. You mentioned
and
Gaza. You went into Gaza, so we get a very curated picture on the news. What did you see?
well, first of all, it's uncanny the degree to which the IDF is trying its best to limit as many casualties as possible. I don't think there's ever been an army, to my knowledge, in history that is trying to do what it can to limit casualties. The problem you have is these guys going to these tunnels. I mean, in Hamas, life is cheap. Life is not valued to them. Their own, the civilian life in Gaza, and especially not the life of the IDF. So there's no value of human life. So as the IDF was in, they are trying their best to be very, very careful of where they go in and fire the weapons or where they go and take out leaders. But the reality is you're not playing with an enemy that thinks like you. So with Hamas, they want to put civilians. They know what the idea. They know how Israel values human life. But they also want to win the propaganda war. So they want to make the world think that Israel is this big bad enemy that comes in and it wants to kill all the babies and the children and the civilians. But it does not want to do that. It goes to great lengths not to do that. But Hamas, as a group, puts these civilians around. In fact, they will kill you if you don't do what they say. Nobody's saying the Palestinians aren't persecuted. They are, but it's not by Israel. It's by Hamas. And you feel sorry for this large civilian population. They should be flourishing. This land is fertile. This land is beautiful. The Gaza Strip, that land is prime property. But when you've got Hamas digging up water pipes to make weapons, they don't really care about the welfare of their civilian population. They only care about totally wiping out the nation of Israel. How do you deal with an enemy like that? And I know there's going to be some people that are hearing this, and they're going to say, "Oh, you just got one side." No, I've got many Palestinians who want to live in harmony with Israel, with the Christians, with the Jews, with Islam. But they don't have the power. They don't have the freedom. Some of them are. There's a what we call a pay to slay idea within Hamas and Hezbollah. And so if you kill a Jew, your family will be taken care of for the rest of their lives. So it really encourages kind of suicide bombs or suicide to take you alive, even though you have to pay a penalty. And this is common knowledge. It's not like we're pulling this out of a hat somewhere. So if you think about what happened during Hitler's regime, he trains a whole generation of youth to look at the Jews as subhuman. Because you look back and you think, how is it that it's a whole generation could just treat Jews as if they were animals or dogs? What Hamas does is educate their children from the time they are born in the Gaza Strip to hate Jews. They even have camps now. And I was shown a camp where they send their kids and they're taught to shoot a gun and how to kidnap a Jew. I mean, we don't have an even playing field here. And even with all of that said, do you know what Israel wants? The Zionists even, and I'm, I have to be careful. I don't know what every Israeli wants. I'm simply saying, as I talk to those who have the most influence over Jewish Orthodoxy, over even the Messianic Jews, the Christians, because you got Christians, you got Armenians, you got Russian Orthodox, you got Greek Orthodox, they come together. And I got to sit in a room with some of these people, and what they want more than anything is peace and to dwell in the land together. That's why there have been times when they've been asked to give back enormous amounts of land, and they have, and it's still been rejected by Hamas and Hezbollah to form a Palestinian state.
Yeah. So take us on that trip. So you went into Gaza. I'm sure it's not the kind of place that you could just wander across the border yourself. You would have been security. No. What had to happen to facilitate you going there? And specifically, what did you see there?
Well, first of all, you can't go all the way into the city. That's impossible because you just can't. The closest you can get to is you can see some of the tunnels, you can see the kibbutz, and you can see basically the outskirts of the city, but nobody goes in. I mean, it wouldn't be safe. That there are still hostages they're trying to figure out. But you see enough to know that you've got it looks like a war zone. It looks like there's nothing there. So it's in shambles. It looks much like the pictures I saw after the Russians and the Americans came into Germany, right into the heart of Germany. And the rubble, the rot, and the destruction. Now, there are still buildings standing, but you got a lot of people who have been displaced. Yes, you have, thank God, you have a lot of aid workers there giving water and food and trying to do the best they can. And by the way, if I could just tell you, the IDF is instrumental in making sure that people who need water and food and clothing are getting them. They're playing dual role. They're trying to smoke out the terrorists while at the same time taking care of people who are the casualties of war. And it's uncanny what they're doing. I don't think any other nation has ever been asked to do what they're doing at the same time. And still, no matter what they do, Can it win?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, let me just quickly, Phil. I was approached by Rabbi Glick. I was approached by a guy named Rabbi Tooley, and the Messianic Jews. And this is amazing to me. The two rabbis who are two of the most influential, and people watching this, if they're from Israel, they'll know who these guys are. But here's the thing: they came to me and said, "Is it possible that your church could recruit a lot of Christians to come into Gaza and bring food and water and help these civilians who are suffering?" I said, "Well, wait a minute. Why don't you do it?" He said, "Because we know that's what you Christians do and you're good at it." Now, here are Orthodox Jews telling me that their idea of Christians are, "We know you guys have done this and you're much better at it. Besides, if we go in it, I'm more sure people will trust us." So they're actually trying to raise money and fund and work with Christians in America to go into Gaza, where they're trying their best to snuff out these leaders, because in their minds, if they can get rid of Hamas, you got a whole generation of Palestinians that can grow up now and can have a future. They have no future right now. And so I found, wow, you're asking a Christian pastor to take a group to go into Gaza and give relief. And so when I get back, Phil, I can't see something like that. You can't unring a bell. You can't unsee that. So I already made up my mind. I'm gonna make a contact with Pastor Greg Laurie and try to go to Franklin Grants Association in Pasadena and see if we can't get an army of people that would go into Gaza. What a great testimony for Christians to go into Gaza with water and food. And the thing about it is the IDF welcome it.
Yeah.
Here's quickly. I know I'm talking a lot, Phil, but there's so much in my head. I could not believe that every time the IDF is going to go after a certain situation because they know a leader's there, they know they got to get him out. The amount of they send out millions of text messages to everyone saying, "Get out, don't be in this territory, do not be anywhere near this." I mean, they talk about telegraphing what you're going to do. And yet the problem is, for some, it's not an option because Hamas will kill you if you leave. What do you do? And so what do you do if you're the IDF? Right now, the primary terrorists they're looking for. You say, how do you know this? So when I was in Hebron, and Hebron's a difficult place to go. I mean, there's huge walls everywhere. But again, it's to keep Palestinian radicals from coming over and killing Jews. Now, you don't have places where Jews are going over and killing Palestinians. Except during the war, obviously, you do what's going on with Hamas, but that all starts on October 7th. And I think you have a group of people trying to figure out how to bring peace to this land, and they feel like they're appeasing. And I know there's a lot of questions by people. We could talk all day about this. I mean, it's very difficult.
I want to take the conversation. I want to take the conversation into a space of the Christian response to all of this. But before we do, is there anything else in particular that you saw that is on your heart that you want to get it off? Because I can hear you got a lot to say here, Jeff. And then we'll get into how should we respond as believers?
Yeah. Well, before I say that, the reason I brought up Hebron is I was able to meet one of the top 5 commanders in the IDF. All right, so this is huge. And I sat with him, and first of all, he thanked me for coming. Again, same thing, thank you for coming during a volatile time. And he walked me through how he's being given body after body every day to bury, because in the IDF military, they bury the bodies of the soldiers who have died, the bodies of they feel that most of the hostages are dead, Phil. They hope and pray, but they've already heard the story. And you've got babies and you've got older men in their 80s and 90s. It's so sad. But they give each one a funeral, and he has to preside. It's his job to preside over that. And just hearing him tell me the story of what he has to deal with every day, the guy's a wreck, and he's trying to be strong, but those things play on you. You think you can hear it, but as you sit by a real person who's trying to deal with all the pain and suffering, and this guy, listen, it's on both sides. He weeps for the children in Palestine. He is not just weeping for his soldiers. He has a great understanding of the suffering in Gaza. But this will you're in a place. I always like to tell my American friends, what would you do? And not that this will ever happen, but what would you do? You live in Montana, you live in South Dakota, and now you've got people from Canada coming over, and they're killing and raping and slaughtering your children, and then they go back. What would America do? What would Australia do if people from another country came? Oh, and then they're gonna hide from you by surrounding themselves with civilians. But it just keeps happening again and again. What are you gonna do? So I looked at the consternation on these leaders' faces. I see humanity. I see people who value life. I see them valuing not only Jewish life, but Arab life, Palestinian life. I see that. And I see them torn for trying to figure out, because we forget one of the most valuable things about Orthodox Judaism is the value of human life. All life matters to God. So even if you're not a Christian, all life, especially the protection of the innocent. And so they are at a religious and a spiritual tension of trying to figure out how to move forward to protect their people and to protect the next generation of the people who live in Gaza. I got to feel I had no answers. As a pastor, here I've got these rabbis saying, "What would you do?" I mean, I don't even expect that. In your Christian worldview, what would you do? And I sat there thinking about all the death and the destruction, and I'm thinking, first of all, I don't know what I would do. And second, especially if the whole world's watching, and no matter what I do, I lose. And so the first thing that happened to me is, why is this story not being told in America? I don't know. Okay, let's show my ignorance here, my gullibility, Phil. What's the reason? Why not tell us what I've been there now, and I've seen this. Why are you not telling us that? So another young Tennessean, by the way, Tennessee's fantastic, but another young Tennessean who's Jewish, his family moved up on the top of Mount of Blessing. And this Mount of Blessing overlooks just one of the most expansive piece of lands that's under the Palestinian Authority control. In that land is a refugee camp. Phil, a camp that's been there since 1968. A refugee camp it receives millions of dollars from our government. Millions. 348 million. You can Google this last year alone into that refugee camp. The refugees in the camp, the Palestinian Authority will not allow them to leave. It's run by gangs. Now you say, well, wait a minute, why? Because the money would not come in any longer to the refugee camp if there were no refugees.
No refugees, yeah.
and that's, so basically the American government, maybe accidentally or not, if they did it, is funding the pay the slave idea that we can recruit people out of this camp. We promise them to take care of their families if they're willing to go across the line and kill and kidnap Jews. It's amazing. And so there's a real frustration that where are our leaders that are standing up and saying, hey, wait a second, this is not how this should work. So my African days taught me a lot about that as well. I knew some of that was going on, but you kind of don't want to believe it, and then you see something like this.
Yeah,
it's sad, Phil. It'll make you weep for people.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it is like because I have not been there. And for most of us, I think most people that are watching or listening to this are probably thinking, well, what can I do? I'm so far removed from this. What can I do? What should my response be? So you understand what it is for Western believers because you are one. You've also been there and had these conversations. What have you concluded that we should be doing as believers in response to what's happening there?
Well, first, I'm angry at my ignorance. I'm really angry at my ignorance. But so the first thing I'd say is try to get well informed. Try to learn. Don't just listen to either the conservative or the liberal media. Don't do that. Try to find voices that you trust, to find out what's happening here. Don't jump to conclusions. Second, I would say, please pray for the peace of Israel. We're told to do that. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for peace. Pray that somehow that God would cause a man or a woman to rise up that would lead people toward peace, that would be an ambassador of peace, because you have enough people here that want peace. However, here's the thing here's where my mind has shifted and changed. You can't have peace without a strong deterrence of evil. You just can't. Because if you don't have a strong deterrence toward evil, evil will run rampant. You know, it goes back to the D. Bonhoeffer quote. You know, the only way that evil prevails is if good men do nothing. If you peace doesn't happen when you just sit back and let those who are evil run rampant over the land. That's never going to work. So we need to pray for wisdom, even if we don't like, for instance, Benjamin Netanyahu. If we don't like or agree, we still need to be praying for those in leadership. We should be praying for the leaders of our own nations, that God somehow would intervene and give them wisdom. Because I'll tell you something, Phil. The thing, what Israel needs more than anything else is wisdom. But I walked away thanking God for my relationship with Jesus, because what Israel really needs is Jesus.
Yeah.
They need the forgiving, restorative power that comes in a relationship through Jesus Christ. I asked some of my friends, I said, what is your hope? You know, you look at everything around you. For me, my hope is in Christ. I asked, what is your hope? And it was interesting. You know, they believe Messiah will one day come, but this Messiah is not divine. He's like a King David or a King Solomon, only to a greater degree. And one day he will stand on the Temple Mount and he will bring the world together. And there will be all the nations worshiping on the mount. And then God will be glorified. And I said, what then? And there was no answer. What then? Because see, for us, our hope is objective because it's in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So for me, what then is, my hope is not in this world. My hope is in the kingdom that will come. And I do believe that heaven, to a great degree, is the restoration of all of it is. But my hope is in Christ. And I walked away and I thought, you know what? I got fired up about Jesus because I'm thinking, I got a real hope, man. No matter what happens, no matter how bad things get, I have a real objective hope because it's based on something that happened in historical reality.
Yeah.
If I'm Orthodox, or if I love my Jewish friends. We have a great heritage together, but man, did we have some great discussions around the Shabbat table. I was invited to take part in 2 Shabbats, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, just learning how they just close everything down on Friday night, and from Friday night to Saturday night, it's family time, it's reading of the Torah, it's blessing your sons and daughters. There's a lot we can learn, but pray. If I'm in Australia or New Zealand, wherever I am, I'm praying I'm praying for the peace of Jerusalem and for the wisdom of its leaders.
Yeah. Well, I think that'd be a great way for us to finish our conversation today. For those listening and viewing this, that together we can pray for not only the peace of Jerusalem, the peace of the world, the peace in our own backyard, in our own lives, that peace that ultimately comes by having peace with God. And that would spill over into great works around the world, the things that you talked about before. We will go and be the hands and feet of Jesus in real and practical ways. But would you mind leading us in a prayer right now?
Yeah. Father, I just thank you for my experience these last 5 weeks in Jerusalem and in places like Akko, in places like Jericho, in Tel Aviv, meeting people and recognizing that they are so much like us. We have this thing in common, that peace and goodwill toward all men. And that the everyday person wants more than anything else that peace that comes when knowing that we are living in harmony with each other, even though we may disagree religiously, even though we may disagree philosophically, politically even. What we want more than anything else is that peace that comes when knowing we can live in harmony. Father, I pray that you grant wisdom, knowledge, understanding to the leaders, all leaders in the Middle East, all of them, and bring them together and somehow give them a glimpse of yourself so that they would know that peace rests in knowing that we are good with God. And until we are good with God through our Savior Jesus Christ, it is difficult to be good with each other. So, Father, I pray for our leaders. I pray for my brothers and sisters in Australia, down in New Zealand, down in the South Pacific, over in America, wherever they are, that we would be a people who are called to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, for the wisdom of its leaders in Christ's name. And I pray, Father, I pray for the children and for the families of Gaza, for the children and the families in the north, whether Palestinian, Israeli, Arab, Jew, all people for their safety, and for those who are ruling over them and putting them in harm's way. I pray somehow in your sovereign will that these leaders would be put to the side and that peace would dwell in the land. That's my prayer in Christ's name.
Amen. Well, thank you, Pastor Jeff. It's been wonderful to be able to connect with you. I'm sure you're feeling kind of revealed and wanting, relieved and wanting to have a little bit of rest while you're there in London.
Yeah.
But the world is in a tumultuous state at the moment. As I said before, as we have this conversation, there are tensions. Even the US is building up its military assets around the Middle East. Russia is getting behind the Iranian side. The stage is set for potentially big conflict. It may come to nothing. It may escalate. What would you say to someone who's concerned about that, particularly a believer?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to earlier. My hope is in Jesus. If this is the way, if we are in the last days, or I should say the last of the last days, then so be it. God's will be done, and He will be revealed, and every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess. So as you get older, this is the beauty of something like this. I still hurt, but I don't hurt for myself because I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be with Jesus, but I do hurt for the people. You can't see this and see the suffering. And I just pray that the suffering would be minimized. That sometimes, the Orthodox Jew believes that you can't pray to God that the suffering be minimized unless you are willing yourself to minimize the suffering. And so that hit me pretty hard. And that's when they said, you Christians are good at that. So you know what? Let's help the people who are suffering, but let's understand the conflict better than we do right now. But if you're worried, don't worry. You're going to be fine. One day we're all going to be in heaven with Jesus. It may be tomorrow. It may be a month from now. It may be 20 years from now. But we're all terminal, aren't we, Phil?
That's it. That's it.
One day we're going to. And if you put your hope and faith in this world, you're going to lose every time. But if it's in Jesus, you can take this in stride.
Yeah. Well, thank you once again. God willing, we'll be able to have a conversation face to face when you come down under again in November? Is that when you're coming back?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to sitting down and having a decent cup of coffee with you the first week of December.
All right. I'm sure we can organise that. Pastor Jeff Vines from One and All Church in Los Angeles. Thank you so much.
Thanks.